You will burn out. You will get to a point where your practice grows and you will want to throw it away. I have met people who run practices doing 3 million, 5 million, all that. But because they're the only ones responsible for the ideas and the revenue creation and bearing the weight of it at all, they're like, I just wanted to stop. There's so many practices that go out of business because the owner is the only person driving it. Today is going to be the day that, the things you've looked at, they create results. But now we're talking about multiplied results because this is about you in a way, but this is about unlocking the power of your team. And we talk about a profitable team. A profitable team is a team that understands how to create profit. They understand how to affect the bottom line. Okay. When there's slow times, your people come with a lot of non-revenue generating activities to do. They're like, oh, we're going to do spring cleaning and we're going to take care of all those faxes and stuff like that. Or you're afraid of hiring new team members because the last 3 hires that you hired actually led to less profits. Like your payroll ballooned, but your revenue did not balloon as well, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, I cannot afford to hire people because it's so expensive. So your payroll is not an investment. Your payroll does not lead to multiplied impact, multiplied profits, multiplied time off. It leads to more work, more payroll, more headaches, right? Now, what I'm talking about is not something that I have not done. I've done this in my companies. I have, our clients are doing these things. I'm going to share some of their stories with you. So these are things that can happen. I just want you to kind of lift up your expectations like, oh my goodness, I could have that. Okay. Let us look at activating our teams for profit. Okay. What happens when we don't do this? When we don't do this, our impact is limited. There's so many things you're going to want to do in your practice and you're not going to be able to do it because you won't have the bandwidth. What gives you bandwidth? Your team. Okay. There's revenue that you cannot create because you cannot create that revenue on your own. You need your team. Okay. You need a team. And so the opportunity cost is that you're limited in how much revenue you can create. The third, and probably the most significant, is if you don't figure out the team thing, you will burn out. You're one human. And burnout in an employed position is bad. Burnout when you created a practice and created your own burnout by your own self, that's really bad, right? And so you will burn out. You will get to a point where your practice grows. It gets to that place that you thought was the dream, and you will want to throw it away. I have met people who run practices doing 3 million, 5 million, all that. But because they're the only ones responsible for the ideas and the revenue creation and bearing the weight of it at all, they're like, I just wanted to stop. I'm like, can some private equity person come get this thing off my plate? They do nothing to grow. They do things to sabotage the practice because on the inside, they know that if this grows anymore, all it means is more work for me, more headaches, less profit, but I'm paying everybody. My payroll is ballooning, but I'm paying myself less. I don't want it. So there's so many practices that go out of business because the owner is the only person driving it. It is something that's not talked about a lot, but it is a huge reason. It's a huge reason, okay? So it is crucial that you understand this. So it doesn't put you in a position where you burn out, but what happens is you buy your time back, okay? You buy your time back. You have time to do the things that matter to you. You have time for yourself. You have time to breathe. You have time to think. I've talked to so many doctors and they're like, I'm just drowning in my practice. I don't even have time to think because I'm the only one here. I'm the only one putting out fires. I'm the only one doing everything. It is so beautiful. My private practice, I'm not telling you something that cannot be done. Okay. I don't necessarily teach concepts that are just cool and interesting. I teach things that I think are cool and interesting and I've done and I've helped other people do. There's only one thing that I practiced for a short period of time and I talked about it and I told the people when I was sharing it, I was like, look, the results of this were just too wild. I'm sorry. We need to talk about this now. But otherwise, I test things, okay? My practice has been a practice doing over $1 million for years, okay? For the last 3 years, this $1 million practice, I have not set foot in it because I've built the team I'm trying to tell you about. Now, everybody at the end of the day, you're going to want to exit your practice one way or another. But we're all constantly like, no, I just want to do this forever. You can't. For one, you're going to leave the planet. Okay. At some point, you're going to leave the planet. So you're either going to shut it down, You're going to pass it on to your family, or you're going to sell it one way or another. If you do not have a team, you have a practice that may be worthless. And please understand, I say this with respect. I'm trying to explain something to you, the opportunity cost of not figuring this out. Because if you have a practice and you are responsible for everything, you have a job. You built a job for yourself. If somebody wants to buy it, they have no evidence that it will work without you. And so even if they did buy it, they would buy it for peanuts. If you did have a team, the value is so much higher. So when you hear people say a private practice is not worth anything, just by the charts, that's why they say that. But if you have a practice that is team-led, and you're not going to get there in 2 seconds, it's a process. But if you have one that's team-led, there is evidence that it works without you. Then now we're talking. So I'm going to give you 3 things, okay? They're very simple. They're very powerful. If you do them, they will rock your world. Okay? All right. Number one, you're going to define the RGAs, revenue generating activities. You're going to define the revenue generating activities for each role in your company. There's nothing like this is what front desk people do, or this is what medical assistants do, or this is what billers do. That's fine, but you are going to define what is the RGA for each position. So it is crystal clear to you how each role creates revenue. Because this is what, and I'll speak from my own experience, right? You hire front desk, you're like, oh, the people in the front, the girls in the front, right? What do? Oh, they greet the patients, they check people in, they do that. As long as you think like that, just know that if you think like that, you're throwing away money. Just know that if you think like that, your team is not carrying any weight, because what do? They greet the patient. Hi, welcome to IPD Pediatrics, right? And then they check them in. That's it. So we have to understand, okay, fine, this is some of what they do, but how does this role create revenue? Why is this important? Why did you start the practice? To help a lot of people and to create revenue. Right? Like it's a win-win situation. So you take care of them, they take care of you, period. That's the way it works. Okay? Now, when you bring on team members, the team members don't come to just do random things. They come to help you do those 2 things, to take care of people and create revenue. If you can get this concept, it changes everything for you. You are there to help people and create revenue. When you hire team members, they're not there to do random things. They're not there to do the most urgent thing. They're not there to do the things that, patients are complaining about this. Let's hire somebody to do this. Great. They're going to serve and earn. Once you can get that equation together, then you have unleashed the profit-creating ability of every member of your team. And that is pure magic. Okay? So I'm going to give you examples because I don't want this to be in the sky. You don't want anybody to get lost. So hear me out. You have a front desk person, okay? So maybe their revenue, I'm going to give you an example, like one each kind of, okay? Maybe their revenue generating activity is collecting all your copays and deductibles and making sure that every insurance company, every insurance that people come with, they're eligible, it's active. If you think about that, if the insurance is not active, you do not get paid for the visit. It doesn't matter how nice the visit was. It was from a financial standpoint, it was a waste. So if they don't do that, nothing's happening. They're not collecting the deductibles. You're not getting paid. Do you see what I'm saying? Because yes, you're going to bill it to the insurance, but the insurance company is going to tell you, great, so collect $150 from that person. Like, you didn't collect it, right? So if they're collecting the copays, collecting the deductibles, then they're making sure the insurances are active. Guess what? They're creating revenue. If they understand this is my role, this is something that I'm responsible for. If you are aware, this is the part of the revenue generation in this practice that this person is responsible for, then you're in a position where they're checking them in, they're smiling at them, they're doing all of that and bringing in revenue. You need both. Now, maybe it's a front desk person, but you're a cash-based practice. A lot of times I see where the doctors are the only people who do those meet and greet calls. Your front desk person can do that. You can train them to do that. And people will say, no, I'm the only one. Excuse you. There are companies where people sell $50,000 products. It is not the owner selling those products. It's the people on the team. So you can train your person to do those calls and enroll people in your practice. I want you to think about how much peace and quiet, how much freedom you have if you're not the only person who has to do these calls. Just think about it, right? So if that person, for every 10 calls, let's say they're not even that good. For every 10 calls, one person says yes, or every 10 calls, two people say yes, right? Then they can have a metric like, this is the number of people I enroll every month. Then it goes from this thing where people, hello, I'm trying to take care of that. They don't do that because they understand. I enroll people. I enroll people into membership. The way they show up, the way they do everything changes. But it doesn't start with them knowing. That's our job as the CEOs. Okay, we have to know. So this person serves, I know how they help the patient, but how do they earn? How do they create revenue? It may be your medical assistant. For the medical assistant, it may be as simple, this is what we did in our practice. Everybody who comes in for an appointment leaves with their next appointment. So think about it. If you have 20 patients on your schedule, and of course, some people are, no matter what you do, they're not going to schedule that appointment. But what if for every 20, you have 17 that's scheduled? That means your MA is creating 17 new appointments every day. Cha-ching, 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 right? Your schedule stays full because every appointment is creating more appointments. They understand this is my role. This is how that creates revenue. Maybe for you, it's more so that they free up your time so that maybe without them, you would see 10 patients. With them, you can see 15 patients. So they free up your time so you can generate more revenue. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, just think, how does this role create revenue? Because if they're only serving the clients and they're not creating any revenue, that's dead weight, that's heavy, that's going to hurt. When you see your payroll, you break out in hives. Okay. You're a biller, right? We talked a lot about, AR and all of that stuff yesterday, but how do they create revenue? Right? Is that they take all these claims, which are little numbers, and then send them to the insurance company to make sure that you get paid and all of that. Great. And so you have their metrics. If their metrics are like this, then they're bringing in revenue. Right? And I'll pause here and say, you see that your front desk person touches almost all the revenue that comes in. Your biller also touches almost all the revenue. So we got to know how they create revenue. And we have to hold them accountable. We have to have meetings with them. We have to do all these things because that's where all the revenue is. Okay. Your office manager, if you have an office manager, whatever your goals are for the year, that's the way your office manager creates revenue. Those become that person's goals, him or her. So if your goal is, this year we want to bring 2 million in revenue, you've reverse engineered it. That means we need to see this number of patients. That becomes your office manager's goal. You cannot have an office manager that has no idea what your vision is, because that person cannot help you to create revenue. Because there are office managers who think that their job is to work the schedule of everyone that is there and put out fires. What a waste of an office manager. They can bring so much value, but you got to define it. So for instance, and I think when I get to metrics, I'll break down the office manager one, I'll break down that one for you, okay? But whatever your goals are for the year, those become the goals of your office manager, right? Because they're there. As a practice owner, you have 3 hats. There's you, the clinician. There's you, the manager. There's you, the entrepreneur. When you bring up an office manager, you need to be able to get rid of you, the manager. That's the point. You brought them in to take all this stuff you did, put it on a person, and just let the person do their thing. If you don't define it, you will waste the potential of the people you work with. You just waste it. So you're paying them a ton and you're not getting a ton of ROI. But from today, we're going to get a ton of ROI. Okay? So that's number one. Number one, you have to define the RGAs for each role in your company. The second one is you need to train your team on those RGAs. Now, there are things that we do when we hire people that we just picked up from wherever. So we want to hire people. We're just like, look, one body that wants to work with me. Yay, let's hire this person. And then we hire the person. And then when we are done hiring the person, we're like, I guess when we hire somebody, you're supposed to do onboarding. So we start showing them all their logins. We start showing them the break room and all of this stuff. That doesn't have anything to do with anything. Okay? Your onboarding is legit. These are the things you do to serve our patients in the highest capacity. You train them on that. These are the things you do to create revenue. You train them on that. That's your onboarding. Okay, we don't pull it up from the internet. We don't ask, what do you do for onboarding? And then you copy and paste. No, because you may want something completely different from what they want. So as far as the revenue piece, unlocking the profit potential, the things you defined in the first one, defining the RGA, you now train them on how to do that, right? So you want your front desk collecting your co-pays and all of that stuff. You train them on how to do that. You train them on the fact that patients will come, of course, and say, oh, I don't have it today. Can you bill me? And you empower them to go like, don't worry about it. They got it, okay? If you hold them accountable, it will magically come out. And I'll give you this example. When in my practice, I used to bill people for their co-pays until I found out like the time they're really motivated to pay you is when they're right there before they see you. That's when they're motivated to pay, okay? And so we changed the policy and we're like, nobody comes back to, into the exam rooms until they've paid. And our patients will go like, oh, but Johnny has a fever and I don't have it today. He really needs to be seen today. So we would play them. We would play the game. And we're like, oh, there's an ATM down the street. They're like, oh, no, like, I don't have it. We're like, okay, well, we can reschedule Johnny. I mean, we can see him first thing tomorrow. Every single time, a miracle happened. They will put their hands into their purse or their pocket, and magically, money will appear. Every single time. I was like, well, looky here. They didn't have money? No, they have money. It's a miracle. It's amazing, right? But you got to train your team on stuff like that. You have to train them. You have to train them about the money drama. You have to train them on that stuff, right? But you train them on how to collect so they can excel at their revenue generating activity. It could be a medical assistant. And they're like, oh, by the time I get the vaccines or by the time I give them their discharge instructions, they don't want to schedule an appointment. That's okay. Like for me, I'll use pediatrics. When they come for a 2-month checkup, their next checkup is a 4-month checkup. So while you're doing the vitals, you're like, oh, real quick before Dr. Una comes in, let's just go ahead and take care of that 4-month appointment and schedule it. So once you're done and I give you your vaccines, you just leave. You don't have to wait for anything. Like who wants to have a baby that just got shots and you're standing at the front desk to schedule an appointment? They all schedule, but you got to train them on that stuff. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you train them so they can win. You've shown them the basket. Now you show them how to score. That's what we're doing here. So when it comes to office manager, let me just pick up some random metrics here. So let's say one of them is you decide, I have a private practice. We have 4 doctors here. We want every doctor seeing 20 patients a day. That's my vision for 2025. Okay, so I'm making this up, 2025. And then in training your office manager, you're like, okay, when you see holes in the schedule, these are the 7 things you can do to fill up the schedule. Because you may know, the person may not know, right? These are the 7 things you could do. You can have them hit the recaller. You could do a social media thing. I say, we opened up some spots to take care of XYZ. Call the office now. You can, pull up all the people who went to the urgent care or emergency room, schedule their follow-up appointments. You could these are the things you can do. So that way you've empowered the person to win. Right? So when it looks like, a week from now, there's this big gap in the schedule, they know what to do. They know what to delegate to the team to do. They're in control. They're in charge. So if they're telling you it's an FYI, I looked at the schedule 2 weeks from now. It looks like it's a lot lighter than it usually is, but these are the things we put in place and all that stuff. I think we should be fine. That's what we want. We want someone who can crush it. But for you to have that, those people are made. They don't just show up like that. Somebody empowers them to do that. And that's you from now on. Okay? Let's say another thing is you want your AR to look a certain way, right? You want your accounts receivable, your aging report, you want it to look a certain way where 80% or 85% of all the outstanding balances in the 0 to 30 bucket and all your personal balances are collected. So you created all this, you created the metrics. You have to empower her. This is how you look at the aging report. You look at the personal here. If you see this here, it means this. If you see this here, it means that. If you see this here, it means this, right? What are you doing? You're taking your know-how, your IP, your wisdom, and you're installing it into somebody else. So when you delegate, you're not just delegating the task. You're delegating the task. You're delegating the thinking. You're delegating the troubleshooting. You're delegating everything, right? Okay. So let's say you have, one of your goals is your online reputation in your community. You want to be known as the go-to practice. Same difference. You empower the person. So you tell them every time someone says, oh my goodness, you're amazing, right? Then that means ask them for a review. Or you can say we have review days. Every third, pick the day that tends to be lighter. like, less crazy in your office, so maybe you're like every Wednesday or every Thursday, every last Thursday of the month is review day. And on that day, we go to war. We ask for 50 reviews from the people who love us. Boom. It's a system that runs. You've empowered the person so she can go and crush it. Okay. So this is the deal, right? You define for each role, this is the way this role creates revenue, right? After that, you now train them. This is how you excel at this role. This is how you can be a rock star at this role. I was reading a book and somebody said, have you wondered where they get the people that work at Disney? They have a good work ethic. They're very pleasant. They're very helpful. And they're very young. Some of them are teenagers. Like, where do they find these people? And the person said, where everybody else finds people. They just have a different training system. They're able to take the same people everybody else sees and turn them into the people who do this, right? So I want you to think about your company as a human resource development company. Because if you do that, you will build the team that will build the business. An absolute win-win. They will get to get a job, one of the best jobs. They'll have so much personal development. They'll be able to look and say, this is where I grew the most in my career. And all of this stuff, level of significance because of the impact that they have, right? And you get to have more impact. You get to have more time freedom. It's just a win-win-win-win situation. Okay? All right. So we're done 2, and 2 will completely change your business. But because we like to over-deliver, we'll give you number 3. Okay? Okay. What's number 3? Number 3 is give them the gift of accountability. Accountability is not a bad thing. At my core, when we talk about personality types, I'm phlegmatic, which means I will do anything I need to do to avoid conflict. That's my natural bent. So talking to people and holding them accountable, totally not my thing. But you cannot build a great company without accountability. It's a gift. So we're going to reframe the way we think about it. It's not this bad thing. I'm not being a bad boss. I'm not micromanaging. I'm not in people's face. I'm giving people the gift of accountability. Because when I give them the gift of accountability, they function at a much higher level in ways that they never even thought possible. They become versions of themselves that they did not know they could become, right? And this is the deal. When you start training people to do new things, if you do not hold them accountable, they will never do it. I mean, think about it. You have learned things as a whole CEO that's rocking it. You have learned things that you don't do because nobody's held you accountable. Me included. I'm not trying to, me included. So it's the same with your team. They will love you after the fact for giving them the gift of accountability. Okay, give them the gift of accountability. So what does that mean? For every revenue generating activity, put a metric behind it and measure it. If you have a scheduler and you say your responsibility is to make sure these 4 doctors in my practice each have 20 people on the schedule, you put that metric there. You meet with the person. In the beginning, it may be on a weekly basis, and you pull out the numbers. Okay, so Tuesday, we had an average of 15. Wednesday, we had an average of 13. Wednesday, we had an average of 20. You're like, okay, so I know we talked about these things. So talk to me. What is the challenge here? How can I support you? Because I know you want to win, and I know you can do this. And they're like, well, what happened was, the lion came out and the lion said, oh my goodness, if you try to schedule somebody, I'm going to bite you. And they come up with all this stuff, right? You let them be great. And then you help them. You help them. You coach them through it. And then you hold them accountable. So you're like, okay, great. So what do you think if we did this and did this and did this? Okay, I think that would work. Okay, you did this way. You can change it and do this way. Okay, great. So we're going to meet again next Friday and see where we are. It's work. But the thing is this, if you do it for 2 weeks, then 4 weeks, then 8 weeks, then 12 weeks, then you come up with this person who can man your schedule and only gives you information. Like, we're looking good. I did see, week out, there's this hole there, but these are the 5 things that I put in place. And this is what else I did. Is there anything else you would have done? No, you did what I would have done. Great. So we're going to watch it. I'm keeping a close eye on it and we'll see how it turns out. These are the kind of team members we want. I mean, imagine running a practice where you no longer think about filling the schedule. It's not a thought that comes to your mind because you have a team member doing that. Imagine running a practice where You're not worried about all the billing going out of shape and all of that kind of stuff because you've put the metrics, you've trained the people, you've done all this stuff. And they're coming to tell you, oh, we noticed with this insurance company, they added this new code and they started denying things and all that. So it's going to look like the billing is out of whack, but it's not. We've resent all the claims. We've talked with the rep and they said in the next 2 weeks, this will all be paid. So I'm just putting it in front of you. So when you look at the AR report, you're not wondering what's happening. Who would want that? Like, I'm saying that and I love that. You see what, like, you can unburden, you can take all this stuff off your plate. But you got to define what the RGAs are. You have to define what they are for each role. You have to train the team. This is where the work is. This is the work that a lot of times we don't want to do. Okay. This is something I struggled with a lot when I started off as an entrepreneur, but it's been 14 years. So I'm a little better now. But in the beginning, I was like, I looked at your resume. You had all this training. Why do I need to train you? Because this is the job of a CEO. The job of a CEO is to build the team that builds the business. That's your job. So you train them on the RGAs. And then the third thing you do is you hold them accountable. Revenue generating activities. So your RGA is revenue generating activities. So that's one everyone wants to memorize. That's a word we use a lot on the podcast, here, in the business school, in the movement. Revenue generating activities. Okay. The third thing is you want to give them the gift of accountability because it is kind of like you learn to drive, but to become good at driving, you then have to drive, right? So you can train your team on the RGAs, which is very good. But when you're done, you give them the gift of accountability so they can practice and create results, practice and create results, practice and create the results. Then they become great at it. So you want them to become masters at their RGAs. And that mastery requires putting in the reps, okay? And if they do not have accountability, they are not putting in the reps. Okay, when you think about how this thought process is changing how you think about your business, your practice, and how it's setting you up for success, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely do you think it is that if you do these 3 things, you will end up with a brand new practice, brand new team, more impact, more revenue, more profit, your payroll, you look at it very differently. You're like, my goodness, this is an investment. This is not an expense. So look at the numbers, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 5, okay, 5 out of 5. I am telling you that for us, private practice owners, I know that there are narratives, okay? I know that there are narratives of, oh, private practice is dead and nothing is working and all of that. You already have the practice. There are people who have made it work. There are people who have continued to make it work. One of the beautiful things about my example is I run a pediatric practice. Please hear me, okay? Please hear me. We are one of the lowest paid specialties, and my practice is 60% Medicaid. And it is a private practice that is thriving. It is a private practice that thrived in the midst of the pandemic. It is a private practice that is working, even though I'm not physically in the building. These concepts work. And the things that I've shown you will require work, but there's nothing I've shown you that's impossible. There's nothing I've shown you that cannot be done. They are simple and you can do them. And they will change your practice. Okay. And I'm gonna show you some stories about some of the docs who have pulled this off. This is Jessica. Jessica is part of Team EntreMD. We love her. She's absolutely amazing. She's a strong physician ally. She says employee perspective. It's so good to be empowered to know what it looks like to do well and to know that our role is important. And that's something you want to do with your people. So this is a bonus. You can thank Jessica for it, right? When you link what they do to the bottom line, link it to the outcome, and as you win, you explain how what they're doing is the reason for the win, that is nuts. That is nuts. It's so good. It's so good. It's such a helpful thing that you can do for your employees, okay? Okay, so if we want to recap real quick, I want you to think, in the last 3 days, you've changed your business. You've learned how to fill up your patient panel, your patient schedule, right? In 90 days or less. We're not talking in 300 years. We did that on day 1. Day 2, we looked at how to get paid. How do I get paid for the work that I'm already doing? How do I get paid? Because I will tell you, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, for some people, 7 figures of revenue left on the table, left in the AR, right? And then the third thing is how to unlock your team for profit creation. Your payroll is one of your biggest expenses. So let's use accountant language on your profit and loss statement, one of your biggest expenses, which means you have to get an ROI on it. You have to look at every role. Every role needs to be creating profit. Otherwise, it's dead weight. And you're not the federal government. You don't have an unlimited amount of funds. You can't just go print more dollars, right? And so if it's dead weight, you either turn it into an ROI or they got to go. How is every role creating revenue? We open a business to serve people in a profitable way. That's why we start businesses. That's what we do. Every team member that comes on has one assignment that has two branches. Serve people, create revenue. They have to do both. They have to do both. Imagine your payroll putting you out of business. That's crazy. But we don't do that anymore because we've learned, okay? We are the people who are going to define the RGAs, right? We're going to define the RGAs for every role. We're going to train them to become masters at those RGAs. And then we're going to give them the gift of accountability and watch them thrive in those RGAs. You guys know that we launched the Profitable Private Practice movement. This is a movement of people who are defying the odds, defying the status quo. Okay, the status quo is we build practices and these practices they may not be as profitable. We're working 24/7 in them. We're charting at home. We're doing the business at home. We're doing all of that. We don't have a life because we started a private practice. This is a movement of people who have decided to defy the status quo. We are not doing that. We unsubscribe from that. Okay. Now, in order to do this is the status quo. So if we do what everybody's doing, we're going to create those results. If we do things in a different way, starting from what we talked about in this workshop, we can defy the status quo. Okay. All right. So let's look at some things. Now, these are some docs in my world, docs that we've worked with. Okay. And I just figured it would be nice to kind of put this in front of you and give you some stories and some perspectives of what this can look like when you do it. Right. Okay. So to the top left, that is Dr. Edwin. He's an OBGYN. He has a private practice that he's had for over a decade. He started using these principles. And he's like, oh my goodness, I had my highest revenue quarter since I started my practice. This is a practice that is over a decade old. I want you to think about that, how wild that is. So all those things we talked about, getting paid for what you do and filling up your schedule, these are things that work, and those are the kind of results that they create. Now, earlier this year, he had made a decision. He says, my dad is advancing in age and I want to be able to see him, every quarter. That's what I want to do. I want to travel to go see him. And that's what he's done this year. Every quarter, he just goes to go see his dad. And he says, and when I go, my team takes care of things like I never left. I want you to think about that. Like I can travel every quarter, go hang out with my dad because that's what I want to do, right? And they carry on as if I didn't leave. How beautiful is that, right? Right next to him is Dr. Tolu. Dr. Tolu owns a practice in Mansfield, Texas. She started her practice, I want to say 3 years ago. And she started busy. I think in the first 5 weeks, I interviewed her after her first 5 weeks in private practice. And she's like, oh my goodness, Dr. Una, we're so busy. We're fully booked. We're so busy. I want you to think about that 5 weeks. So I know a number of you have asked, like the movement, if I'm about to start, is this the right time? If you're about to start, there are things that, people who are veterans missed out on that you don't get to miss out on. You get to start it the right way. And so she started with a bang and she stayed doing that, right? And totally killing it. In the beginning, she started setting up time for herself where she could go have lunch with her kids at their school. She's been able to do a ton of vacations, local, international. She was like, man, I've wanted to do medical missions for years. I've not been able to create the bandwidth to do it. She didn't create the bandwidth as an employed physician. She created the bandwidth as a private practice owner. I want you to think about that. This is what your experience can be. Okay? All right. So, and right after her is Dr. Sarah Merritt. She's such a rock star. She has a pain clinic, if you will. She's just crushing it. She's built a phenomenal team, a team that is running stuff. And even if she's not there, she has the bandwidth. She's like, I want to have all these experiences with my children, whether it's certain games they want to go to, or they want to travel internationally and all of that. And she's able to do that as somebody who's running a 7-figure practice. Like, think about that, right? And she came in. She came in already really successful. So again, some people will say, well, I'm already doing all this stuff. Like, is this something that I need? Yes. If you have schedules that are not full, you need it. If you have, like, you're not collecting all the money that you work for, you need it. If you have not unlocked the profit creating ability of your team, you need it, right? Right next to her is Dr. Chiruba. And Dr. Chiruba is a surgical gynecologist. In the Bay Area, she started a direct specialty care practice. And many people are like, what? This model does not work for surgical. This model does not work in the Bay Area and all of that stuff. And she started her practice and she pulled it off and she was profitable, paying herself from the first year. And again, she has time for the things that matter. Time to travel with her family, time to travel on girl trips, time to spend time with her kids, time to work on her business. She's building the team. She's doing the work. And so I'm not talking about hypothetical things. I'm talking about things that I've done. I'm talking about things that people in our world have done as well. Yeah, now she's adding another physician, which is so wild. It's so wild. Okay. So these are things that are available. Now, I've been working with doctors for the last 6 years. And one of my dreams, my team will tell you this, one of my dreams has been to set up a way to work with people that is, they can just see what is possible, right? One of the whole movements, because we can completely rewrite the narrative for physicians and especially physicians in private practice, where we are people, we understand how to unlock the profits so we're profitable, we can multiply impact, we can live life on our terms, right? For me, I have always said, I am not willing to build a business that will cost me my family. I'm not willing to build a business that I need to build at the expense of my faith or at the expense of my health. I just have no interest in doing that, right? And so that has forced me to figure out how to do it and still win at life, because I want the dream business and the dream life. I want them both. I want them all. Okay. So that's what made us launch the Profitable Private Practice movement that is available for every physician who owns a private practice. Every. Okay. Now, what are we going to do there? I know I've talked about it, but I need you to hear this, okay? I know some of you have already signed up. I just want you to have a reminder of what you're coming into. And those of you who haven't, the link is entremd.com/movement. Save your spot, okay? How to fill your patient panel. You can become a master at that. You understand how to do that. You understand how to go from, I don't have patients to have filled up my schedule. There is a process. We shared some of those things here today. I shared 3 of the best ones I got, but there are 7 of them, right? Okay. Collection practices that maximize revenue. The fact that your clinic is busy does not mean that you will take any money home. In fact, there are people who will tell me, I have a practice, I'm seeing 30 patients a day, but I don't understand. I'm not bringing in any money. I'm having to do locum shifts to make money. What? It is easier for you to figure out how to get paid for what you do than to do that, right? But this is a place where we leave a lot of money on the table. It just makes no sense how much. You're going to become a master at that. Okay, you're going to become a master at optimizing your team for efficiency and profits. So we already talked about a lot of those things already, right? Now we're going to unpack them. We're going to do them. We're going to get them done. I'm going to give you the gift of accountability. The team is going to give you the gift of accountability so you can do this for your own team. Because if your team is bearing the weight of creating the profits with you, you are in entrepreneurial heaven, right? Revenue cycle monitoring, become a pro and understanding you're not hoping that your biller is doing what they need to do. You're not hoping. You know what your numbers are. You know what the numbers mean. You know how to make data-driven decisions. You are in control. You're the boss. You're going to become a master. You're going to become a master at wealth creation systems, right? You are going to become a master at taking the profits that come from your practice and turning them into wealth. It doesn't stop at profits. Once you start generating profits, that's raw material for something else, right? Okay. All right. So those are the things you're going to master. In the movement, we're not talking about all things private practice. We're not talking about credentialing. We're not talking about any. We're talking about how do we get you profitable? Because when you're profitable, you can stay in business. When you're profitable, you can bring on the right team. When you're profitable, you can exit if you want. When you're profitable, you can buy back your time. So in solving this one problem, we've solved so many problems. That's what we want to do. We want to make you a master of these things. Okay. So technically, how does that look? Okay. You get monthly strategic lessons. You're like, well, what would that be like? You've been here for a 3-day free workshop. So clearly, you know what that's going to be like. It's going to be all about those 5 areas of mastery that we just talked about. We're going to get strategic sessions on that. Okay. Every month, you're going to have somebody who owns a practice doing over $1 million in revenue come to teach on a specific topic, and not theory, something they've done and something that's worked and is working in their practice, right? They're going to teach you something specific. You can go, you can apply it, you can start winning immediately. You're going to have co-working sessions. And in those sessions, we're not coming to talk. You're coming to implement. You're coming to do. So maybe you hear about, defining the revenue generating activity for each role. And you're like, I will do it. I will do it. I will do it. On that day, you're going to sit down and you're going to do it. You're going to get the work done. In the EntreMD Business School, we call it eating frogs. You're just going to eat the frog and be done with it. Okay? And you're going to get tools to simplify implementation, templates for meetings, scripts for calls, all kinds of stuff. And every week. So what happens is every Thursday at noon Eastern, we get together, we do some significant work for an hour, and boom, we're done. We go do the thing. And the next week we come back. We're doing the next thing. The next week we come back. We're getting stuff done. Okay? Your investment, I've talked about this. Okay? And this is how you know that there's no need to ask a question about this. Okay? When people work with me, 30 grand is what they pay. Okay? This is not 30 grand. If I told you this was $10,000, which the value of this, for some of you, you are going to use this to add an extra 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, 7 figures to your practice. And it could easily be a $10,000 program. And it's built that way, right? Well, we're not doing $10,000. We're like a cappuccino a day, less than a cappuccino a day. That's it. To master these 5 things so you can figure out the profits. Because once you figure out the profits, now we can start playing games. We can start working on all kinds of stuff. But nothing works till we figure out the profits. Okay? So $997 a month or a $1997 for the year. Okay? Now, those of you joining now, this is less than a cappuccino a day. Okay? Those of you joining now, you're founding members. You get the absolute lowest price that this will ever be. You also get the 21-point profit audit checklist. And this is just a checklist you can look at. You're like, my numbers are not making sense. You can look at these checklists and you can work through these 21 things and you'll find this is where the issue is. Let's go work on that. And that's something you can use with your team. You get the ideal job ad templates because, again, people cannot hire because they don't know what it is they're looking for. They attract the wrong people because they do not have the proper ad. They give you a template that shows you how to generate that as opposed to copying and pasting or asking ChatGPT because Chat does not know this one. Okay? Tomorrow at noon, your first class is tomorrow at noon. So if you haven't registered, register now. And we're going to look at the 7-figure private practice blueprint. If you want to add 7 figures to your practice, or you want to hit your first 7 figures in revenue, this is the blueprint that will get you there. We're going to give you a yellow brick road so you can follow that. Okay? All right. For those of you who pay in full, in addition to that, you get complimentary tickets to EntreMD Live, which is a $497 value on its own. Okay. You get complimentary tickets to EntreMD Live. It is our annual event. It's happening in Atlanta, Georgia. You get to be in person with some of the most phenomenal physician entrepreneurs. So you get that. And in addition to that, so for something that's $197 a month, you also get 2 months free. It's ridiculous. Okay. So this is a deal. Okay. This is not something to overthink. Clearly, we've done everything in our power to make this an absolute no-brainer. Like, absolute no-brainer. So make the decision right. Make the decision, sign up, come in with the intention of doing the work, and let's get the work done. Okay? That's it. That's it. Just make the decision, make it right. This is the team you're going to be working with. It's me, it's Makita, it's Dr. Bedford, and we are all committed to seeing you win. That's why we're here. We want to see you win. That's it. If you attended this workshop, you know clearly we want to see you win. Okay? All right. So if you're ready to regain control of your practice, this is for you. If you want proven systems, not stories, not theories that drive growth, this is for you. If you're committed to creating a practice that supports your dreams, this is for you. If you are starting, this is for you. If you are a veteran, but you have these holes in your business, this is for you. We'll work on this. Then we have other things to work on. Okay? So the time to take action is now. That's the link, entremd.com/movement. Your first class is tomorrow at noon. If you're not able to make it live, there will be a recording. We record everything. But we're going to talk about the 7-figure private practice blueprint, which if you think about your ticket to EntreMD Live and the call tomorrow, that's your ROI right there. like without even doing the rest of the things. So go save your spot.
Like, no.